What is up, everybody? Rajay in the house on a Monday night. Was not really planning to do a live this evening, but you guys have definitely got my interest peaked, so to speak. So I figured I'd do a live. I'm kind of curious on some of your guys' thoughts out there based off the shorts that I released earlier today, which was from actually a couple weeks ago. Me and Dave from Beer in Front on the Midwest Beer Show, where we had a part we were talking about kids in breweries. And it just so happened today I saw an article that I posted over on the Facebook page and generated some interest. And it all just kind of timed together. But every so often, it seems to be a hot topic about kids in breweries. So I figured, why not just go ahead and have the discussion on here? And shout out to Shane in the house. Cheers, Shane. Great to see you, my friend. And kind of get some of your thoughts, your comments. I've been reading some of them coming in off of some of the posts, whether on Facebook or even over on LinkedIn or here on YouTube. And I find it fascinating, just the different sides of it. I think the great majority of people are kind of in the middle where they don't really care about kids being in breweries, but there's definitely some that seem to be over to the end where they're against it. And there's definitely some to the end that are highly for it, to the point that they've actually criticized some of the breweries putting in measures about having kids at breweries, and to the point of even making threats. Like, is it that serious? Is it that serious about beer that you have to have your kids? Speaking of beer, let me crack open a beer for this discussion, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to actually have one of the Lagunitas sugars that are now back out. So if you get a chance that you hadn't seen them and you're looking for them, you should hopefully find these at some of your stores. And great that Lagunitas brought this beer back. It is a favorite. I know a lot of people were happy to see it was going to be hitting shelves again. So I picked that up a while ago, and going to get a chance to actually enjoy it some. So if you didn't see the piece previously, I'll pull it up here so you can kind of see the piece that I shared over on Facebook. And this is just one of the good amount. Like I said, every few weeks, a piece will come out about kids in breweries. This one here was based out of Ohio and is up in the Columbus area, but a Central Ohio brewery basically are now having to defend their child-free policy for after 7 o'clock. I mean, it's after 7 o'clock, right? People are off work. They want to kick back. They want to enjoy some beer. They may not want children around. Some may not care, but some, Now, those that have children, they want to blow off some steam too. So obviously, they might want to go to a brewery as well. But it raised some pretty good information here. They want to make it a spot where everybody can come and enjoy, but they're running into issues where there's unsupervised children. And obviously, it's not that of the servers and the employees to have to worry about taking care of kids or making sure the kids are staying out of things. The piece goes into talking about where there's been also damages to the property. That's also caused some situations as well. But then some of these adults, and again, they say a small group, basically calling people child hater, and among other things. It's like, really? Just because you want people to respect the property, respect the customers, respect the employees. So now you're upset with them because you had children and you can't get your drink on there. I don't know about that, folks. I don't know. As far as some of the issues they talk about, kickballs and frisbees to dodge, I guess they put those out and kids get into them, right? Some like to dig up rocks in the beer garden, create hazards for adult guests that trip over. They antagonize the neighbors' dogs through the fence. You got to be watching your kids, make sure you're not doing that kind of stuff. They had to take down the patio swing because some of the kids was at an amusement park riding the bolts nearly came out. Imagine that. Imagine that liability suit because the kids messing around and then they get hurt. Obviously, the brewery's going to be the one held responsible. Ping pong table broken, cornhole, they can't even play that because the bags end up on the roof. So there's some various scenarios that take place at breweries, and They're just trying to protect themselves. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are out there. Drop some comments in. Let me know. How do you feel when you're actually at the brewery and you're seeing children there? Does it bother you? Does it perturb you? Or do you have children and you take care of the children? You're basically responsible and you feel like you're being thrown into the mix with others that you should be held accountable for. It's been a long time since having this beer. And nice that we're starting to get into the fall weather here in Cincinnati. We were basically high 50s today, so definitely the chill was on. So having something like this in the evening makes for a nice one. But some breweries, you look online, you can find a lot of information. I remember earlier this year, the Northeast, there was a brewery that was going to also no children after a certain time. They were facing some different backlash up there as well. Online, I was looking earlier. There was another brewery just happened to be out of Ohio as well. They banned kids under 16, and they said due to irresponsible parents. And how many times have you been in a brewery and you see kids running around and you wonder what their parents may be? Or like we talked about on the shorts, which parent is being responsible? If both parents are there enjoying themselves, which one is actually watching the kids? This one brewery they talk about, like where kids were throwing around food on the floor and parents just not really paying attention to them. Obviously, wait staff had to sometimes dodge out of the way. The breweries had over the past 8.5 years tried to implement policies that would allow children to be at the brewery as long as they were supervised by a guardian. So it's not something new. It's been going on for a while. Said due to a few bad apples and responsible parents, we would no longer allow children under 16 on the premises. And that was Forest City Brewery. They are out of Cleveland, Ohio. And they raise valid points to it. You can't just drop off your kids thinking they are at a daycare center, right? You got to be able to be there, take care of them, make sure they stay out of trouble, make sure they're not causing harm or other bad situations for other patrons that are actually there. So can't really fault them on wanting to have a proper establishment that's safe and fun for everyone. Shane says, child hater LL. It's not about that. If a business main product is alcohol, kids should not be allowed in. I'm trying to relax after work or with friends. I don't want to have to deal with kids. I personally don't think they should be allowed in the first place. Well, there you go. And, it's different feedback. I've heard like different culture where like over in Europe, and I have not been in Europe, but over in Europe is kind of seen as more of a family type orientation at some of the breweries where people will have their kids there. But I feel like their culture is also different. You can actually drink at a younger age overseas in a lot of those countries. And I think you're kind of more raised or ingrained into that kind of culture. So there's more of a respect if you do go to one of those spots. If anybody from overseas knows and they want to comment on that, feel free to drop a comment there and let me know. But it just seems like it's more understood. Where here, I've been in situations where I've been in breweries and just to sit there and observe. I don't have children myself, but I'll sit there and watch sometimes and just seeing a couple of kids running up and down after a point because let's face it, kids are going to have to put them in a brewery thing. You have to find something to hold their attention. They're not going to be fully attentive for that long before they start getting bored with stuff, right? So you have to find ways to keep their attention going. A lot of the breweries will put out like little things like games or stuff like that. A lot of those games, I think they put out for thinking it might be for more of the adults that might come in there. You go into some of these breweries and they've got like, I don't know, Monopoly, Life, whatever games they may have. But it's usually some of the adults that are sitting there for a game night playing. But obviously kids are going to try to play some of those as well. But then kids, depending on how young they are, can get into different things. They can have like different pieces floating around. You can have someone step on something. And if you're not monitoring them, you run into an issue. I was just at a brewery a couple weeks ago over here at Mantry, and there were people there with kids, and I would say 95%, 98% of the kids and stuff were fine with their parents. But then there was a couple times where you saw when the antsiness came in, and then the parents that had them, they were definitely more responsible. They went over to find out what the kid was doing, and it was like, okay, it's time to go, or you need to come over here, whatever. So there were definitely some that took control of it, but I also saw some that just weren't paying attention as well. So you have that in play. Exactly. Be a parent. Keep your kids away from a place where adults are drinking and trying to have adult conversations. You bring up a good point there too, Shane, with the adult conversations, because then, if you're at a brewery and you're drinking and you're getting a little, as they say, loosey-goosey or whatever, you might have more colorful language. You're telling jokes, you're doing more stuff that might be more adult type feel. Do you want your children possibly exposed to that? Maybe it doesn't bother you to have them exposed to it, but it can be awkward if the adults are trying to have a conversation. There's this little kid there staring at them sometimes, trying to figure out what they're saying. So that's another part there with the adult conversations as well, how those come into play and how those could affect things. I feel like in the end, if you are going to go, and everybody wants everybody to be able to go and have a good time, you definitely have to be responsible. And speaking of responsible, again, and I've seen it a few times where a couple comes in with kids, but both couple are drinking. So it's like, well, who's the more responsible one here? Like maybe one's going to have just one drink or whatever. I don't know. I don't sit there and I don't count or whatever. But, to have two people in there actually drinking, you have to wonder sometimes which one is going to be the one in charge to make sure everything goes okay. And there was actually a comment I had earlier on the shorts, which I really liked. See if I can find that here. Right now on YouTube, they got something weird happening on YouTube. If you have a YouTube channel, you might be seeing it yourself. Comments are not showing up on desktop as much as they are on like the phone. That's what I'm finding. One of our buddies, Anderson, Ginger Yeti, had brought this up in one of our YouTube chats, and I just kind of started seeing it myself now that something seems to be amiss. But let me look at my phone here and I can see what that comment was. Let me see. Scroll. Okay. This was actually from, and this a new user, I think, to the channel, but it was at user, and it's got a bunch of letters after it. If you look on the shorts, you'll see the comment there. But he basically said, I don't know if it's he or she, I was born in 1970. Both my parents drank, but if we ever went to a restaurant, my mom would always stay sober, so we were safe, right? That's the responsible part, where if you're going to go out with the kids and you're going to go out and drink, somebody has to be responsible. Now, he said at home was a different story. Would just stay and dad would get plastered. Mom would just stay and half be drunk. So it was always fun. But remember, when they first came out with the short cans of beer, you knew with the push and taps, my dad would let me and my brother share a beer, right? When they had the little short things. And that's how I had my first beer sip, was the little, what do you call them? Little pony bottles, whatever, the old Miller High Life, when they had like the little 8-ounce bottle, and like my grandparents, and they say, go get me a beer, whatever. You get a few sips out of it and stuff. So you start with the little stuff there. But, he brought up that point about being responsible. Now, he was born in 70. I was born in 69. We were two Gen Xers. So, I mean, different breed in that regard, I think. But point being, even though he was under 10 years old and drinking beer, it didn't lead me down a path of alcoholism. He said, yeah, I got drunk quite often when I was in high school and going to parties, but by the way, he was legally allowed to drink, so he lost interest. It was a thing that he's basically noting on here, that he's also now 55 and haven't had a full beer in about 25 years. But he definitely appreciated just the memories of the reminiscing going through when the conversation we had about that. But in essence, he's basically saying the responsibility was there. and it didn't cause him to have to go out and really want to get drunk. Because I know sometimes they say with some of the younger generation, they're not drinking as much because being dragged to breweries with their parents, stuff like that when they were younger. Um, but he's basically saying with the stuff that I have here from him that, it was an experience, but it was a different thing. But it was always like the responsibility was there. If you were home, it was something different. And just a different time, that's one thing that me and Dave kind of talked about on the video. It was a different time back then, where you get these little sips of beer and all that kind of stuff. But at the same point, it's kind of like when we went out back then, one, we didn't have breweries where we go to whatever. You couldn't go to a bar, which brings up another point. If you can't go into a bar, why can you go into a brewery? Now, some will say because they serve food, but not all breweries serve food, right? So you can order food in for ones that don't serve food, but when they look at it, it's still basically like a bar with just all different types of beer. But they make an exception and sometimes have like people be able to bring their kids and their family in there and do like a family type time. It's interesting. Shane actually said exactly this. Like, that would be a parent. Keep your kids away from a place. Yeah. So we had that one, but he also said, like you said, kids need activities. They get bored easily. Take them out to a park or something, not a brewery. Now, I will say there are some breweries that are definitely trying to embrace it some, and they've actually created some like kid-like areas as well. So they expect people to bring kids, and they set up things for the kids and kind of away from where a lot of people are actually drinking, like, kind of like the old school McDonald playland type area, right? Where you can put the kids over there and the parents can be over here. But then again, you can't be too far away because you have to basically monitor, make sure that kid doesn't get in anything. Because, at a point, you have all the kids there, some of them are going to start wandering away and going to be curious about what else is happening. So you can't just basically drop them in a pit as well. I was looking online, and some of the key things they bring up about kids in the brewery, safety concerns as kind of a high thing that a lot of the breweries are talking about. And a lot of them have cited incidents of children running in areas with heavy machinery or climbing equipment or creating potential safety hazards for both the children and staff. There's some breweries when you go, there's some that are set up where it's in essence like a warehouse. There's not like maybe a door, like they put a rope there where you're not supposed to go behind the rope. And adults will know that. But if you're a little kid, you may not know that, and you can easily wander into something. Again, that becomes like a safety concern. Of course, then they have customer complaints, where a number of breweries have implemented restrictions following customer complaints about the unsupervised children behaving in a way that disrupt the experience of other patrons. And I've seen that with some of the things as well. And I've had people that have told me about some of those situations that have happened like that when you're sitting there trying to enjoy. You have the kids that are basically coming over. You're a stranger to them, but they're just like disrupting things, or they're just running around in circles, and you're almost tripping over them. Of course, the staff roles, some breweries have stated they are not equipped or trained to act as babysitters for children, which is true, which can detract from their primary responsibilities. And you think about some of these breweries, think about like Oktoberfest, like when they're kind of around all these different beers, you can't have kids like being tripped over by some of the places too. You got to make sure they're out of the way and not in front of a lot of these beer tenders that are going to be carrying beers around and stuff like that. Or your regular brew house, if they're carrying a tray of beers, they don't have time to focus down to see they're not going to step on a kid or trip over a kid as well. Then you also have to talk about the legal framework. Again, talking about children getting hurt in there, that can be a situation. And you also have things like the varying policies. They make mention of policies such as allowing children inside restricted from taproom or specific hours. So there's a few different things being discussed about kids and breweries. It's just interesting on how this comes up every couple of weeks or so with the story talking about kids in breweries. And if you're a parent, I would love to hear any comments you may have too about, how you feel along the lines like that. Like, I know a few beer drinkers that have children and they don't take their children to breweries. They don't want to have that kind of situation or maybe feel that pressure. If they go to a brewery, it's usually just them or with friends, but not with the kids. So they'll have the kids at home and they'll have a couple beers there or something. So it's not, they don't get left out of it as well. They're also missing out on some of the fun they would actually like to enjoy. Ryan in the house. Cheers. Great to see you, my friend. Look at a brewery as a public house or community watering hole. Everyone should be welcome. What better place to model responsible drinking and change the stigma of alcohol to your kids? You see, there's another aspect of it right there, too. And then, Ryan, are you here in the States as well? Kind of curious there because I was talking earlier, like in overseas, like in Europe, I know it's kind of seen more as a family type establishment where you'll see families at a brewery. But I think the kids over there are more used to it. They're kind of more brought into it with more of a respect about it. And so it's more family accepted, so to speak, than what you may have here in the States. And I would say usually at a brewery, if you're taking kids, you're probably going earlier into the evening or in the afternoon, right? Like you're not going to be there when it's like 9 or 10, most likely, I would think. I'm not sure. When you can actually have a lot more people that are there to get their party mode on. They might be pounding more drinks. It might be a little more rowdy, more of a ruckus, so to speak, than what it is earlier on during the day. But if you go on a Saturday during the day, I'm here in Cincinnati, and if you go during like Mad Tree, they're big of having like people watch FC Cincinnati there, which is a pro soccer team. People do get crazy that watch that game. So you could have kids exposed to some different things there. Or if you go on a Sunday during the Bengals game, you could have stuff happening. So even going through some of the day type events, or if the Reds are playing in the day game, you might see some stuff there too. So I guess it doesn't have to be just late at night, but you can still have some situations there. So it's curious, like if you do take kids there, do you have to prepare your kids any type of certain way, or kind of let them know, don't do this, don't do that, or whatever? Or do you just kind of go in just like you were going to dinner at Fridays or something? Yes, parents should watch their kids, but this should be true of any public place. Well, good point there. Also know your kids and what they can and can't handle, right? Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens there. And, some kids struggle with like, I would say like a sensory overload, a lot of different things. And there's a lot of kids that are definitely more curious than others that want to go see what's happening and go over and find out different stuff. And curious, it's kids being kids, right? It's kind of like when we were kids and we were outside, there's a tree. We're going to try to climb that tree because that's what kids do. You're curious about that tree. So they go to these breweries. If you're not keeping an eye on them, they get around, they see some stuff. I mentioned the machinery type thing. They end up walking off into some area. They might try to climb one of the vats. They may try to do some different things. It's just kids exploring as a surface type thing, but there's consequences that can come out of that as well. Shane said, unfortunately, Ryan, it doesn't work like that. You can teach your kids about alcohol without going to a brewery. Besides, it's not like the kids are allowed to drink. So why are they there? Well, they're there because the parents are there, right? Because they don't get there without the parents. And then that also becomes ultimately the parents' responsibility to make sure that they're doing all the stuff they need to do to make sure the kids are not getting into mischief and paying attention to them and not just thinking they can, again, drop them off and go have a good time. And then everybody just gets in the car and goes home afterwards. So there's definitely a good amount of things to think about there. And again, I don't think it ever gets to a level like in that story where you should have people threatening breweries and harassing breweries and just because they want to say we want to have limited hours on who can be here. I think that's the brewery's right. It's their right as a company to decide on the business. So it may seem unfortunate if you're a parent in that regard, but that's the rules. That's the rules. That's the rules of their brewery, And I'm not going to sit there and argue and say they can't make those rules because that's their business and that's their model. Now, I will say, knowing some of the things happening in craft beer, you make that choice, you do have to prepare for any type of repercussion if you're the brewery, because we know how tight things have been for some of the breweries out there. And having a welcoming experience for parents with children does maybe help out to get more dollars into the brewery. So if you do take that off the table, it might be a little bit more of a tougher run for you. But that's something you have to be willing to accept. But it's your choice to accept, I think, as the brewery as well. If you are threatening the brewery because they won't let your kids in, maybe you are the problem and not the brewery, right? Like, yeah, if it was that serious to you, and that's what some of the people that responded kind of on some of the posts about the Ohio brewery was, you know, it's the parents. It's kind of like sports. You think about sporting events with kids. It's not really the kids that get kind of crazy. It's the parents. When I used to coach football and I coached basketball, and I had kids that were from 8 to 10, 8 to 12 years old that we would coach, it was never really about the kids. It was about the parents who were trying to live their Al Bundy years through their kids. And it's like, your time is over. You don't have a career anymore. It's about let the kids do what they're going to do. When they're out here, we're here to coach them for a certain way, how to play. You're not the coach. You're the parent. Just go over there and sit down and watch. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. Ryan says, kids learn what you do, not what you say. I feel this is very dependent on the brewery and what food activities they offer. Also, I know adults that don't drink yet go to breweries. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, but that's like the one brewery I mentioned earlier. They were limited to under 16, and they actually have gotten some backlash on that too. But it's like, if you're under 16, we just don't want to have you in the brewery. There's just too many issues that take place. So you might go at 17 or 18. In Ohio, for instance, you can be of that age. And if you're with your parents, they can allow you to sample beer and not get in trouble with the law from it. So again, if you're like teaching your kid about beer, or you're trying to warm them up to alcohol, let them know. So it's not like something they go to college and they feel like they want to go crazy on, because believe me, I've seen that back in the day in college when I was at WVU, we used to sit there and watch all the freshmen that you knew never drank before they got to college, because they were the ones always getting hammered. And Morgantown is on the hill for where the fraternities are. And we go to the frat parties and we just sit out there and watch them basically roll down the hill because they had drank too much. They didn't know how to pace themselves or how to moderate themselves. So in Ohio, one of the things you can do if you're younger and underage, if you're with their parent and they want to give you a beer or whatever, they can do that as long as you're in their custody or whatever with them at the location. And true, but the adults are allowed to drink if they wish. The kids can't. Yeah. Unless you have like some law, like I just mentioned there. That's the way it breaks down, so to speak. And again, it's all a matter of what is right, what is accepted, what is okay, what is the responsible thing to do. There was even like, for those of you that might read some of the different food magazines, I like to get into food. Like it's kind of somewhat of a foodie from here and there, but like Delish, which is a well-known publication, they had a piece about should children be allowed at breweries. And on TikTok, the majority thought not. The majority said no, kids should not be in breweries. LinkedIn, breweries banning kids, a growing trend and a mistake, right? So that business aspect of it that I mentioned before is something that comes into play. That was a piece written on LinkedIn about 3 months ago. And you're going to keep, I think, seeing some of these things. Now, away from the kids being in a brewery, the other area that some get upset is not to compare, kids to animals, but it's the whole pets in breweries too. That's, and I feel like sometimes the pets might be easier to maintain because, they're just trained to just, be there, relax, chill, just lay right there. So a lot of times they don't. Now, if they see another, like dogs, if they see another dog, they can get excited, and sometimes they might try to bark or bite that other dog or whatever it may be. But for the most part, around people, though, they're usually no problem at all, for sure. Um, just looking through here, uh, there was a website called Scary Mommy, December 10th last year, and a woman had filled the mayhem at her local brewery from a kid, basically of a kid that was actually running around doing some crazy stuff there as well. So it's getting noticed. It's getting noticed. And a question for you all, I mean, have you ever been in a position where you went to a brewery and you might have got a beer, we're going to get a beer, but then you noticed there was just too many kids that you turned around and said, I'm not going to drink here, or I just get one, and you got one and you left because it was just too much there. So is there business possibly walking out the door because of the children in the brewery as well? I know that we've been some places before where it was just too many as far as, and I say too many as far as children, not that they were all acting out, but just children being children, vocalizing that it was almost like we were drinking beer inside of a Chuck E. Cheese. I never been in a Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know if they serve beer, but I imagine if Chuck E. Cheese served beer, this is the kind of place we would actually be in. And so we like ate our food and then we kind of left. But it was a nice brewery with some good beers, but it just wasn't hitting that moment. It's like come back another day when it's like maybe less kids and stuff here. And there's some breweries that you go to where you don't have really the children, where it's kind of like a nice chill spot as well, that becomes like more of your rotation to maybe go to that spot. And there's pros and cons, I guess, on all different sides of how you look at it, but it's just interesting on the whole children aspect. Personally, again, I don't have children, but I don't know why you would want to bring your children to the brewery outside of, maybe it was something they were doing, like a family special event or something that day, or maybe it was some type of charity type event or something like that. But just on an average going out, like if I went down the street right here near me, I have like Nine Giant Brewery and a couple other ones, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it just wouldn't be like something where I would expect to see a lot of kids there. Now, if I was going to like more of a restaurant, I guess they serve drinks and they have kids there. Maybe some people just see it the same. I know I see it differently. I see the brewery as more of that more drinking type area, and basically the modern day saloon is what I kind of look at the brewery as actually being. And you would have kids going into a saloon, so at least none of the Westerners I ever watched, they ever had really kids going into it. So it's kind of like, I feel like, again, not having kids puts me in a different position on how I look at things. But I would be like, if I had kids, I probably wouldn't want to take them into a brewery. Personally, I just feel like I wouldn't want to be in that type of scenario. But I don't know how to actually, say for those that actually have the kids, because I don't have them. I don't have that dilemma. Now, Shane on here, I know Shane has son there. And, at one point he maybe had to make that decision or whatever. But it's one of those things where I guess parents have to make their own call, and you got to make sure you have your children that can properly handle that too. I sound like a kid hater. I actually love kids, just not adults. Yeah, I know you do, Shane. Yeah, I know you. But it is, I mean, it is an adult space in that regard. So being that it's your space as an adult, you want to go there, you want to unwind. I mean, if I'm done a full day of work, I want to go to a spot where I can just chill, maybe not have that type of loudness or rambunctiousness running around. Hey, Vanessa, what's happening? Happy Monday to you. Just a pop-up live here because talking about kids and breweries. And it's been something that's been coming along for a while. And today there was such a reaction, it seems like right now, even with the shorts, as I'm looking at the analytics over here, that people were watching that video, and then the article that came out that I put on the Facebook page about the brewery getting backlash just seemed timely to go ahead and let's talk about this topic here. So that's kind of what we're kicking right now. If you're watching this back on a replay, by the way, as some of you do, I know, drop a comment, let me know as well. Or if you're on a podcast, drop a comment in there too when I put this up so that I know what your guys' thoughts on stuff are. Vanessa chimes in, says the kids should not be at a brewery. Yeah, so I mean, there's going to be both sides. Like some parents, like, you know, when we were here talking with Ryan's had no problem with having the kids there. Hey, Arizona in the house. OHIO, my friend. Buckeyes, you got your Buckeyes #1 in the country right now. It's a situation where I can see the good. I won't say the good and the bad of it, but I can see the pro side and I can see the con side of it. And I can see the benefit to the brewery to be able to allow people to come in, but I can also see the downside of letting them come in and what some of the consequences may be. So, you know, each business has to make that own decision. Each family that brings kids in has to make that decision if they want to do that. The only one that don't really have a decision to make is, I mean, the ones that don't have kids, unless you don't want to go there or you want to leave after you get a beer or something like that and everything, where it's not like your spot because there's just too much happening. I mean, if you're the business, you're deciding who can get in there with or without kids. And if you're a parent, you're deciding whether or not to go with or without your kids. But if you're going to have kids, you're just like, hey, didn't realize there were a lot of kids in here. So, oh, Vanessa says in a restaurant, at a brewery, perhaps, yes. Well, the thing is, like, some breweries do have the restaurant, right? So if you have a restaurant in there, is it any different going to a brewery with a restaurant than if you took your kids to Applebee's or to Fridays or any restaurant that has like a bar, Longhorn or Lone Star Steakhouse, whatever it may be? I feel like that's a little bit different, though. I feel like when you go to one of them, you know you're going for the food, right? Like food, restaurant, it's like a food and bar, like food and, you know, bar and grill. You feel like the food's going to be a big part of it already there. When you're going to a brewery, like the centerpiece is really the beer. And you're like, they may have food, they may not have food, but usually the food is secondary. So it's not like the main focus. On the other ones, usually the food, if you're taking a family to one of those other spots, that food is the main focus. Now, Arizona says breweries there have restaurants, which here in Ohio, we have some breweries that have restaurants, but we have some that don't. And they'll get a food truck. And we have some that don't have a restaurant or a food truck, but they let you order food in. You know, you can get pizza delivered, you can get DoorDash delivered, whatever it may be. If you go to New Jersey, none of the breweries really have food there because they have the laws from like the restaurant hospitality lobby won't let breweries really get food there unless it's like some type of special exemption they can get for special occasions. So why would you have kids in the breweries in New Jersey? Because there's no food, but kids will still be in breweries at times with their family, unless there's something where they're not going to allow them in. But when I was there before, I did see some breweries that, you know, you'd have some children with you. And not all the breweries set up activities for people to bring kids, right? So that's where I think you run into a situation where kids get bored, they have nothing to do, they start getting in and out of things, and then that's where you might have some issues that take place. Those that kind of are preparing themselves and kind of doing some different things, and you know, if you're going to have a little fun area over here, you're going to put like a bounce house or something like that for kids kind of off in the corner somewhere. That would be more, I would say, welcoming to have like people bring their kids or so. But again, you do that, the kids aren't going to really stay there. They're going to actually get out and get around to other spots too. At those restaurants in the bar area, no kids allowed there. Yeah, if you go to restaurants in the bar area, you still can't have the kids in the bar area. You're right. Yeah, they got to stay at the table with the where the food and stuff is. Restaurant with the bar is totally different. Exactly, Shane. That's what I was saying. The main product's actually food if you're going to one of those type of establishments. When you're going to a brewery, beer is the main product. So it makes a little bit of a difference. Carl Strauss, California has a yeah. I've been I think this Carl Strauss I think might be a chain. I think I might have been to one of their things before, unless I'm mistaken. But you go here, like if we go to Matry has a restaurant inside theirs. You can go to, well, I say some have restaurants. Like Matry has like more like a kitchen, but like a restaurant. Like people go there and get the pizza and they'll get different food there. Esoteric has like food at their place. Sam Adams, you can get food at theirs, but it's not like, it's almost like the food you get is to complement the beer. So like you're not going to go into Matry and order a steak like you would at, say, a Longhorn and then have a beer with it. You're going to get like a pizza or, I don't know, mozzarella stick, some type of finger type food to kind of soak up the beer, which again makes beer the main player in the whole situation versus the food. Perhaps if the parents bring the kids on those leash harnesses, is that acceptable at a brewery? They use them all the malls in the past. I don't know. I haven't seen one of those things in a long time. Last time I saw one of those was at an airport, which was good for stopping kids from running away, because kids will run in the airport for sure. I think they might have been outlawed by now, even with the way things are. I don't even know if you could put kids on a leash anymore. I haven't seen them in so long. I think the last time was 2012 or 2013 or so. It's like we were joking on the other video when we were kids, stuff like that, getting a sip of bourbon or whatever, or things like that when you're out with your parents, whatever. Nowadays, you do that, someone might call CPS on you or whatever, Child Protection Services. Yeah, it's a different time. I remember the first time seeing the kids on the leash. That was interesting, but it was like, it's almost one of those ideas like, how did nobody think about that before? But yeah, it's a little bit crazy there. But I'm sure we're going to see more things popping up here again over, like I said, every few weeks, there's another brewery that comes out with something and it talks about the situation. Even the New York Times had an article, the kids are all right, just not at a brewery. So even the New York Times is writing about kids being in some of the breweries there. Kids in breweries, Wake County Breweries Facebook, that's in Baltimore. They had an issue there where I guess their Facebook post about kids in a brewery sparked a lot of debate as well. Patch, another website, strong opinions about kids at breweries. Yeah, you have a lot of stuff happening out there around the kids. Can you bring kids inside bars in California, liquor stores? Here's what the law says. You can't bring. I think you can actually, if you go to, I know in Kentucky, you're not supposed to bring kids into a liquor store. Like it says that on the door, but I've seen parents go in with kids and they don't say anything. So I don't know if anybody really follows the law the way it's supposed to be. Craft breweries outrage parents by banning children as owners reveal families' most entitled behavior. That's an interesting piece that came out here back in July, talking about that. CBS News had a piece about children in brewery. That's the one about the Boston brewery up there that pretty much said they now expanded only 21 plus after 6. So one brewery here in Ohio I mentioned, no one under 16. This one said after 6, you have to be 21 or over to get into the brewery. So it is definitely going across on who's allowing what here. And the brewery bans, so that's the one about earlier about the under 16. But then, like you said, there's other things that come out. VinePair had a piece. If you don't want kids at your local tap room, you're missing the point. And I think they were trying to draw into the opportunity for more revenue by having it, because now you can have a family come there and they'll spend more money But if you're not taking them in, you're going to lose business. So that's the other side of the coin as well that we touched on earlier. Let me see here. Take a look at some of the comments. And when I said California, you might have parents get those proposition hazard stickers on the kids. BJ's is a chain. BJ's is a chain. We have a BJ's here. I actually enjoy going to BJ's. I will tell you, so let's look at BJ's. I can say going to BJ's is interesting. I actually don't see, or I haven't seen as many children when I've been at BJ's. Even when I go like during a Saturday, during the day, it still tends to be about 85, 90%, 95% adult. I mean, I don't remember seeing any children really in there. Now, chances are there probably was one here or there, because the BJ's we have is part of a strip mall that's pretty popular where people do shopping and stuff. But if they were there, they were very well behaved. They were not running around. They stay seated. But then again, BJ's being a restaurant, you also have more of that table area where you're seated to be a certain spot rather than where you have more of a wide open experience at an actual brewery. So it's kind of a little bit different. But the funny thing is, like I said, I don't see a lot of children when I'm in the BJ's. And the BJ's here is something we'll go to probably like once a month or so. We'll check it out. BJ's Wholesale Club is like Costco, their restaurant. Well, the BJ's he's talking about is the BJ's Brew House, but there is a BJ's Wholesale Club as well, which is like Costco and Sam's. Seattle or Toronto? Ooh, I'm kind of pulling for Seattle just because they've never been to the World Series. But I do like Guerrero and what Toronto was actually doing. And I almost feel like if it's Seattle and LA, you're going to lose a good amount of the country from watching the World Series because it's going to be all West Coast. Whereas if you have Toronto in, you do have that kind of East Coast, West Coast, and you have the Canadian city versus the American city. So that might even draw more eyes onto it as well. So, but this Seattle-Toronto series has been great to watch. But I tell you what, watching the Dodgers the other night, and if you didn't watch that game 4, Ohtani put on a game for the ages. I mean, the 3 home runs, the pitching, him getting a win. I mean, it's just, you don't see that. You can't see that anymore because nobody's doing what he's actually doing here. And it was just like, it was an all to see him actually perform the way he performed there. If you want to take your kids out to have a beer, might I suggest Applebee's. Remember Applebee's? That was in Hall Pass. That's the place where all the single people went. It was Applebee's. Kids might get a conversation they shouldn't have. That's a funny movie. If you've never seen it, it's pretty funny. I give them that. Our Applebee's all closed as did Friday. Oh, wow. I did not know that. We still have Applebee's open here, and we have on Fridays, I think, around still. You know what's coming back, or at least starting to come back, at least in one area up in Minnesota. They had the return of Chi-Chi's a week or 2 ago, and there's a second one coming. And they're thinking they're going to try to get the line rebuilt up. So new owners, I guess, took them out of bankruptcy where they were, and they're trying to rebuild them up. So you might have Chi-Chi's starting to make a return. Chi-Chi's back in the day in the 90s, that was the spot to go right there. And yes, the new Chi-Chi's, if you're wondering, does have the chimichanga because that was one of their most popular items back then. And the chimichanga is on the menu. Although I did like their margaritas for sure. 3-1 and 7th. Okay, it was 2-1 when I was watching it earlier before going live. So yeah. And it's hard to root against Seattle with Cal Raleigh in the season he's having. I mean, it's hard to not pull for him. I have to go to Minnesota. I used to love. Yes, it's I want to say it's St. Louis County in Minnesota, I believe. Here, I'll tell you here, Shane, because you're not that far away from it, actually, if you wanted to go. I mean, you're still a good drive, but not as far. Uh, the shops at West End, St. Louis Park, Minnesota, Chi-Chi's. Yeah, so they reopened there. Um, and I saw a couple things online about it. People are loving the food again. So I would love to see Chi-Chi's make a return. Um, I always enjoyed their stuff. So they always made some pretty good food. It's pretty good sizable portions. It's funny, back in the 90s, or was it 90? Yeah, back in the 90s when I was at the time working in insurance, we had a Chi-Chi's in our plaza. And like Fridays, to be like, oh, we're gonna go to Chi-Chi's for lunch. And the assistants would be like, well, you're not coming back, are you? Like, oh, we'll be back. We'll be back. And you get up there at lunch at like 1 o'clock and you'd have a couple of those margaritas, like, nah, we're not coming back. We're done for the day. So, and we shoot pool because Chi-Chi's had a pool table, the one that we had and stuff. So, yeah, Chi-Chi's, hopefully they make a good return. That's one of the chains that I wish wouldn't have gone by the side. Great place to go for sure. I won't even get upset if you bring the kids there. Yeah, well, Chi-Chi's is perfect for like bring the kids there, get the fried ice cream and all that kind of stuff. Those kind of spots make sense. I mean, that's a family dining establishment, really. I mean, so again, it's kind of like food is the primary goal, and then you have the drink. Now, I will say, Chi-Chi's did have a pretty good happy hour. So some people would hit the happy hour. In that case, it's more about the drinking. But you were in the bar area, and the kids weren't in the bar area usually. You had to be at the table with your food. So you were still good. You didn't have like a brewery where the kids are right there, close to you while you're sitting there drinking or you're having some type of conversation or whatever you don't want the kids to maybe hear or know about. Many of the birthdays spent at Chi-Chi's with a crazy hat and a Polaroid picture. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you have a craving for fried ice cream. Yeah, fried ice cream is, our Mexican restaurants here, you can still get fried ice cream. Obviously, they still make that, and they make the churros? No, just churros, like the little fried dough or whatever like that. Oh my goodness. Yes, the famous Polaroid picture. Shake it like a Polaroid picture. I can't cue the Outcast because then I'll get hit with the copyright. But yeah, So like I said, it's interesting as you find stuff out. Just kind of one of those things. Being one that likes to observe and bring a lot of stuff here to the beer channel, I like to sit there and kind of just see what's happening. Another piece talks about here, like if you go to Utah, kids can't go to Utah breweries. You're not allowed to actually be in them, although they're saying that people are trying to find a workaround out there. But the law is like no kids in Utah breweries. So different states have their different rules, different guidelines. There's also wineries that are now banning kids. It makes mention on here as well, which I don't even know why you would bring a kid to a wine. Like, okay, a brewery. Brewery's a little bit more of a different crowd, I think, than what you get at a winery. At a winery, I just feel like, how do I say it correctly and not offend anyone? I don't want to. It's just a different type of feel. It's more of a, I think with the winery folks, it's a little bit more. I wouldn't say restrictive like that. Everything or refined. It's just not the same. Like I don't see the winery crowd sitting there doing stuff like you're going to see at the brewery crowd, like as far as like some of the games. I see it being more just more of a, what's the right word I'm looking for here? More of a, I guess refined, like a more of a refined type group. They're not as I don't see them maybe being as leisurely and having as much entertainment fun as what the beer crowd is. Uptight might be one. I was trying to find the words that can kind of be a little bit more snobby. I was trying to find words that weren't as brash, I guess you can say, that were a little bit more friendly. Posh might work. Posh might work there. It's just a different type feel, right? So it's kind of like I don't see the winery crowd getting down and playing cornhole as much as you would at a brewery crowd. Put it that way, it's just a different type feel. So, in my opinion, now I drink wine here and there. We moved to the new house here, we got a bar set up, and I've got wine out there. It's just a different type feel, though. I feel overall when you look at most of those type of things. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm mistaken. If I offended you, I'm sorry if you're a wine drinker. It's just I feel it's a different game out there for the wine versus the beer. Um, but even then, if people were taking their kids to those type of scenarios, they're even looking at like, hey, we don't want to have kids in here doing stuff. What you think about with wineries and the bottles of the wine, you still have the glassware like you would have at a brewery, but there might even be more stuff in there, maybe more delicate because you have a lot more of the glass plates and stuff because they're trying to do the whole charcuterie boards and stuff like that. So you got knives, you got that stuff out more at a winery for cutting their cheese and the meats and things like that on the charcuterie board. So that might even be not as safe or more unsafe than what it is for the brewery. But yeah, any scroll you do like on Google and stuff, it's just amazing to see the different things that are popping up with breweries and kids, and then also starts to bleed into things like pets as well, but more kids. And it's just interesting. As one here in Kensington now, Kensington Brewery, they say no kids after 2 p.m., which is interesting. So that's even into the daytime where they're not even wanting kids there at that point. So, it's one of those things out there. You just gotta, I guess, go to make sure you know where you're going and if the kids can go with you or whatever. But yeah, I just thought I'd get on here for a bit and kind of kick some stuff there and kind of share that stuff. It's almost been an hour already with me blabbing and gabbing here. But thanks for everybody that definitely participated on it. And again, for those of you that might hear this on the playback, make sure you still drop a comment so I can see your guys' thoughts or hear your guys' thoughts or read your guys' thoughts, I should say. They'll get out until 3, kids free. There's your thing. Hey, Robert, cheers, my friend. No kids. Last week, someone had their dog sitting on the table in a craft beer place. Yeah, that's a no-no. That's a no-no. Speaking of on the bar, so that's the other thing, too. Like, I've seen at some of the breweries where they'll come in and they'll have babies that are, I don't know, maybe a year old or year and a half, maybe even younger than that even. But younger than half, they're usually holding them. But I've seen them where they'll have like kids, and to me, I mean, I don't know if it's just me or if there's other people that same way. You got your kid in a diaper, you don't sit the kid in the diaper on the tabletop or on the bar. You just don't. You don't do that. And I've seen parents do that with their kids in there. Or they'll try to go change a diaper in the corner of the brewery. Like, no, take your kid to the bathroom and change the diaper. You don't do that like in the bar area. Those kind of things are definitely high no-nos. Yeah, no dogs either. Like I said, sometimes the dogs are easier to deal with than they are with the kids and stuff. But it's amazing some of the things that you'll see there. But I was like, when I see I see a person do that with a kid, I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. I don't want nobody's kids with their diaper ass on the bar. That's for sure. Or on a table, And I know the server doesn't want that because then it's like server got to go over and cleaning and wiping down stuff all the time. So, yeah, it seems like that should be common sense to not do that. But maybe that's just me. Again, I don't have a kid, so maybe I just don't think that way. But yeah, it's there's always something interesting that you get sometimes when you see some of the stuff. But I'm going to go ahead, get this wrapped up. It's been about an hour. I appreciate everybody that chimed in tonight. And we'll probably revisit this at some point. Maybe we'll come back and we'll get a panel up here to talk about it as well. I know Shane will be eager maybe to do that if we can get something set up. And I know we can get a few other people to have them voice their concerns. I know our buddy John Ginger Yeti would love to have a chance here. Ray from the Alkanaz, when he's freed up, I'm sure would love to get a chance too, and a few other folks, and kind of get a cross view of, maybe some of the people that are for it and some that are against it. But tonight was just my take on it. Thanks for everybody with the whole support on the channel, by the way, too, and checking out the different stuff. Like I said, I'm looking at the analytics, and the shorts video is still blowing up about the kids in the brewery. So appreciate all y'all taking a look there in the comments and the Facebook page and everywhere else you're putting them. That's why I love doing this stuff. I love being able to share the passion around beer, but talk about these kind of topics that definitely hit as well. And see what you guys are thinking out there too. But thanks for everybody tuning in. Oh, tomorrow night, just so you're aware, and I'll post something to the community post once they have it all set up, but I will be on live with the Lager Room guys. So that'll be probably around 7:30 tomorrow evening. I will be their guest over there. If you haven't checked out the Lager Room here on YouTube, check them out as well, John and Dave. It'll be a blast tomorrow, as we'll be talking about some different things from around the beer world, I'm sure, and providing some input on stuff. We may be talking about this over there tomorrow as well. They may see this tonight and be like, hey, we want to talk about the kids in the brewery type thing too. So stay tuned. Check out their channel. Check out Shane here as well, Shane's Craft Beer Review. Always some great stuff. If you didn't see the last video I just did, Shane has sent me the Defy Gravity that I just did the review on, and I got a couple more stuff to put up from what he has sent to me as well. That'll be coming up here anytime soon, but I do have Oktoberfest beers that I'll start lining up here on the channel as well. So I've went through a few of those because it was Oktoberfest season, and now the Oktoberfest season is kind of slid through. I can now go in and drink, not a lot, but I'll get a couple pumpkin beer reviews up for you. And if you didn't know already, Christmas beers are now out. I actually saw Shiner had their Christmas beer out. Great Lakes has their stuff about to hit. Mad Elf from Trogs is already out. So all the Christmas beers are falling out there already. So it's crazy. It's crazy how the seasons of beer actually run. But I will look forward to catching up with you guys soon. Thanks again for everybody that tuned in. Y'all have a great rest of your Monday. And until next time, cheers, everybody.